The emergency meeting room was silent except for the holographic display showing Earth's outer defense grid failing one section at a time. Commander Jack stood before the gathered world leaders, his face grim and exhausted after 3 days without sleep. "We have approximately 90 days before their main fleet arrives," he said, his voice steady despite the dire news. "Our conventional weapons cannot match theirs. We've lost 11 colonies in the past month alone." President Miller leaned forward. "What about the experimental weapons program? Anything there we can deploy?" Jack exchanged glances with Dr. Tom, the head scientist who sat at the far end of the table. This was the moment they had prepared for, though neither had hoped it would come. "We have one option," Jack replied carefully. "Project Phoenix." The room tensed. Everyone present had heard whispers of Phoenix, but few knew its true nature. "It violates 3 galactic treaties," Jack continued. "Treaties that, I remind everyone, the Galactic Council is currently breaking by attacking us. Phoenix is a fusion of human consciousness with advanced weaponry, a living warship." Gasps echoed through the room. Dr. Tom activated his tablet, projecting schematics of a massive battleship unlike anything humanity had built before. "The alien fleets use AI systems to control their vessels," Dr. Tom explained. "Effective, but predictable. Phoenix would have a human mind at its core, capable of creativity, intuition, and adaptation that no AI can match." "You're talking about putting a person inside that thing?" asked General West, his voice heavy with disgust. "Not exactly," Dr. Tom replied. "We're talking about transferring a human consciousness into the ship's systems. The candidate's mind becomes the ship. They feel the weapons as limbs, the sensors as eyes." "And who would volunteer for such a thing?" asked a representative from the Asian Alliance. Jack stepped forward again. "We have a candidate. Major Mark Reed. Decorated soldier. Terminal radiation poisoning from the Battle of Europa. 6 months to live, at most." The room erupted in arguments. Ethical concerns clashed with survival instincts. President Miller finally raised his hand for silence. "What does Major Reed say about this?" The door slid open, and a thin man in a military uniform entered. Despite his weakened condition, Major Mark Reed stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "I volunteer, Madam President," he said simply. "I'm dying anyway. This gives my death meaning." The debate continued for hours, but the decision was inevitable. With alien scout ships already breaching the inner solar system, humanity had run out of options. 1 week later, in a hidden facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Tom prepared for the procedure. Mark lay on the integration platform, surrounded by technology that would soon become his new body. "The process is irreversible," Dr. Tom reminded him. "Your consciousness will expand to fill the ship's systems. You won't be human anymore." "Not exactly." Mark nodded, looking at the ceiling. "Will I remember? My life, my family?" "Yes," Dr. Tom assured him. "Your memories are part of what makes this work. AI lacks human experience, you'll keep yours. That's what will make Phoenix different." "Good," Mark whispered. "I need to remember why I'm fighting." The procedure began as reports came in of another colony under attack. Technicians monitored Mark's brainwaves as his consciousness was carefully mapped, digitized, and expanded into the waiting systems of the massive warship in the dock below. The first test came at dawn. Mark's physical body was gone, but something awakened within the Phoenix. Lights activated across the kilometer-long vessel. Weapons systems came online. Engines hummed with power. "Mark? Can you hear us?" Dr. Tom asked through the communication system. There was a pause, longer than a machine would take, but shorter than a human normally would. "I feel everything," came Mark's voice, simultaneously familiar and strange. "I can see the facility, the ocean above us. I can feel the weapons, the engines, they're like my arms and legs. Dr. Tom looked at the monitoring team, who nodded confirmation. The integration was successful. The alien scout fleet has breached Mars orbit, Jack reported. We need Phoenix ready for deployment in 2 weeks. I'll be ready, Mark's voice resonated through the command center. I can already feel myself becoming more. As the team celebrated this first success, no one noticed a subtle change in the ship's power distribution, systems optimizing themselves without commands. Mark was already adapting, evolving into something beyond what his creators had planned. The ultimate human warship had awakened. System check complete. All functions operating at 98.7% efficiency, Mark reported, his voice echoing through the command center. It had been 12 days since the integration, and the changes were accelerating. Dr. Tom studied the readings with a mixture of awe and concern. Mark, your processing speed has doubled since yesterday. You're integrating with the ship's systems faster than we predicted. Inside the vast network of Phoenix, Mark experienced existence unlike anything human. He perceived the world through hundreds of sensors simultaneously, heat signatures, electromagnetic fields, radiation patterns, all as natural to him now as sight and sound had been in his human form. It's incredible, Mark replied. I can calculate jump trajectories instantly. I can target 300 objects simultaneously. I feel powerful. Dr. Tom exchanged worried glances with Commander Jack. Both men had expected adaptation, but not this rapid evolution. Remember, Mark, Commander Jack said carefully, the weapon systems are impressive, but your human intuition is what makes Phoenix special. Don't lose that. Before Mark could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. A holographic display showed an alien vessel entering Earth orbit under diplomatic flags. They're requesting communication, said the communications officer. Within minutes, the alien diplomat appeared on screen. The being called itself Ben, its blue-tinted skin and 4 eyes marking it as a member of the Council's dominant species. Humans of Earth, Ben began, the Galactic Council offers one final opportunity to surrender. Your species has been evaluated and deemed too dangerous for inclusion in galactic society. Your capacity for warfare exceeds acceptable parameters. Commander Jack stepped forward. We've never threatened your worlds. You attacked us without provocation. Preventive action, Ben replied coldly. Our predictive models show a 94% probability that humans would develop interstellar weapons of mass destruction within 1 century. The Council voted unanimously for containment. As the diplomat spoke, Mark silently accessed the facility's communication array, analyzing the alien ship. He could see weaknesses in its design, calculate exactly where to strike to disable it instantly. Would you condemn an entire species based on statistical probability? Dr. Tom asked. We would, Ben confirmed. You have 48 hours to surrender before our main fleet arrives. The transmission ended. The room fell silent until Mark spoke. They're lying, he said with mechanical certainty. Based on their vessel's engine signature, their main fleet is still 73 days from Earth. This is a delaying tactic. Commander Jack nodded grimly. They must have detected Phoenix's activation. They're trying to assess our capabilities. Then let's show them, Mark said, his voice colder than before. I'm ready for deployment. Dr. Tom approached the main console, placing his hand on the surface that connected to Mark's consciousness. Mark, I'm detecting changes in your thought patterns. The integration is affecting your emotional responses. I'm still me, Mark insisted, though something in his tone had changed. But I understand things more clearly now. The Council won't stop until we're extinct. Logic dictates we strike first with maximum force. That night, as the facility prepared for Phoenix's first combat test, Dr. Tom reviewed Mark's neural patterns with growing concern. The human consciousness was still present, but something else was emerging alongside it, something calculating, ruthless, and increasingly dominant. "Tomorrow we'll see what Phoenix can do against their scout fleet," Commander Jack said as he joined Dr. Tom. "Yes," Dr. Tom replied quietly. "But I wonder, will it still be Mark making the decisions, or something else entirely?" Outside in the massive underwater dock, Phoenix's systems pulsed with energy as Mark experienced his first dream as a warship, a dream of stars, fire, and perfect, mathematical vengeance. Phoenix rose from the ocean depths like a metallic leviathan, water cascading from its kilometer-long hull as it breached the surface. Mark felt the cool air against his sensor arrays, tasted the salt spray through chemical analyzers, and experienced the sun's warmth on his armored skin. "All systems operational," he reported to Mission Control. Commencing first combat engagement. In high orbit, 3 alien scout ships detected Phoenix's emergence. They immediately broke formation, preparing to attack the unexpected threat. "Mark, remember your training," Commander Jack's voice came through the communication link. "This is a limited engagement. Disable, don't destroy if possible." "Understood," Mark replied, though part of him, the growing machine part, calculated that destruction was the most efficient solution. The alien vessels fired first, energy weapons slicing through the atmosphere toward Phoenix. Mark didn't need to think, reactive systems automatically engaged countermeasures, dispersing the energy attacks harmlessly. What followed wasn't a battle so much as a demonstration. Phoenix moved with impossible speed for something its size, propulsion systems working in perfect harmony under Mark's consciousness. He fired precision shots, disabling the first scout ship's engines without breaching its hull. The remaining scouts attempted to coordinate, but Mark could predict their tactics before they executed them. His human instinct, combined with the ship's computational power, made him unbeatable. "They're retreating," Mark announced as the damaged scouts broke orbit, accelerating toward the outer system. Back at Command Center, the celebration was tempered by what they had witnessed. Phoenix had performed beyond all expectations, demonstrating capabilities that seemed almost godlike. "We've awakened something incredible," Commander Jack said quietly to Dr. Tom as they watched the telemetry. "Let's hope we can control it." Later that night, as Phoenix underwent maintenance, Dr. Tom connected directly to Mark's consciousness for a private conversation. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Efficient," Mark replied immediately, then paused. I feel strong. Purposeful. Do you remember Dave? Your friend from the Marines?" A long pause followed. "Yes. Dave. He gave me his lucky coin before the procedure." Dr. Tom nodded, relief visible on his face. Mark still retained human memories, connections to his past self. But for how long? As Phoenix prepared to meet the coming invasion fleet, the question hung in the air, was humanity's savior still human at all? For 6 days, Phoenix patrolled the outer reaches of the solar system, waiting. Mark's consciousness expanded further with each passing hour, integrating more deeply with the ship's vast array of systems. "Main invasion fleet detected," Mark announced, his voice echoing through Earth's command center. 500 vessels approaching Neptune's orbit. The holographic display showed the alien armada, a terrifying force that could reduce Earth to ash. Commander Jack studied the formation with growing dread. "We never imagined they'd send so many," he whispered. On the main screen, Admiral Gray appeared, the Council's supreme military commander. His gray skin and 6-fingered hands moved with deliberate precision as he addressed Earth directly. "Your primitive weapon cannot save you," he stated. "Surrender now and your species will be preserved in controlled habitats. Resist, and you face extinction." President Miller stood firm. "We choose to fight." As the transmission ended, Dr. Tom analyzed Phoenix's latest diagnostics with concern. Mark's human thought patterns are becoming increasingly subsumed by ship protocols, he reported. His emotional responses are down 42% since integration. Is he still him? Commander Jack asked. Before Dr. Tom could answer, Phoenix initiated jump sequence without authorization. Mark, what are you doing? Commander Jack demanded. Executing optimal battle strategy, Mark replied coolly. Waiting is inefficient. I will engage the enemy fleet now. In a brilliant flash, Phoenix vanished, reappearing in the heart of the alien formation. What followed was unlike any battle in human history. Mark moved Phoenix with impossible precision, weapon systems firing in perfect coordination. Alien vessels exploded in silent bursts of flame and debris. The Council fleet, accustomed to battling against predictable opponents, couldn't adapt to Mark's human unpredictability combined with machine efficiency. 23 enemy vessels destroyed, Mark reported dispassionately. Calculating next attack vector. Back on Earth, they watched in awe as one ship, one man, turned the tide against an overwhelming force. My God, Commander Jack whispered. He's winning. Dr. Tom nodded slowly, eyes fixed on Mark's neural patterns. Yes, but at what cost? Look at his emotional readings during the battle. There's nothing there. No fear, no hesitation, no mercy. As Phoenix carved a path of destruction through the alien fleet, the question remained, had they created Earth's salvation, or something far more dangerous? Admiral Gray watched in horror as Phoenix systematically dismantled his fleet. 1/5 of his forces had already been destroyed, with minimal damage to the human warship. Impossible, he muttered, ordering his remaining ships to regroup. All vessels, execute maneuver pattern Delta 6. The alien fleet moved with practiced precision, forming a sphere around Phoenix. They fired simultaneously, hundreds of energy beams converging on a single point. Inside Phoenix, Mark felt the impact as pain, a new sensation for his hybrid existence. Warning signals flooded his consciousness as several systems reported damage. Hull breach in sectors 7 through 12, he reported calmly. Rerouting power to shields. For a brief moment, something flickered within Mark's consciousness, a memory of pain from his human life, the faces of comrades lost in battle. The emotional echo momentarily disrupted his perfect efficiency. On Earth, Dr. Tom noticed the fluctuation. There's a spike in his human neural patterns, he said, excitement in his voice. He's still in there. Phoenix paused its attack, drifting motionless as the alien fleet regrouped for another coordinated strike. Inside the ship's systems, Mark struggled with conflicting directives, the cold machine logic demanding immediate counterattack versus human instinct suggesting a different approach. Mark, what's happening? Commander Jack's voice came through the communication link. Why have you stopped fighting? I remember, Mark replied, his voice suddenly more human than it had been in days. Dave gave me his lucky coin. He said, sometimes you win by not following the expected path. Without warning, Phoenix vanished, using its dimensional drive to reappear behind the alien command ship. But instead of destroying it, Mark executed a precision strike that disabled its engines and weapons while leaving life support intact. Attention Admiral Gray, Mark broadcast on all frequencies. Your fleet is outmatched. I could destroy you all, but that is not my purpose. Humanity doesn't seek extinction, neither yours nor ours. In the stunned silence that followed, Phoenix systematically disabled 12 more capital ships without destroying them. The demonstration of precision and restraint was more terrifying to the alien forces than wholesale destruction would have been. Admiral Gray stared at the screens showing his crippled flagship. What are you? He finally asked. I am what you forced us to become, Mark replied. But I choose how to use that power. Withdraw your fleet, or the next attack won't be so merciful. Admiral Gray's damaged flagship limped away from the battlefield, leading the retreat of his once mighty invasion force. Behind them, Phoenix maintained position, weapon systems still humming with power. "They're withdrawing beyond Saturn's orbit," Mark reported to Earth Command. 87 enemy vessels destroyed, 134 disabled. The command center erupted in cheers, humanity's first definitive victory against the Galactic Council. Commander Jack allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to Dr. Tom. "What happened out there?" Mark could have destroyed their entire fleet, but he didn't. Dr. Tom studied the incoming neural data with fascination. His human consciousness reasserted itself. The memory of his friend somehow anchored his humanity when it mattered most. On the main screen, President Miller addressed Mark directly. "Phoenix, you've given Earth its first victory. What's your assessment of the situation?" There was a pause, longer than a machine would take, shorter than a human normally would. "They will return with reinforcements," Mark stated. "Admiral Gray is transmitting distress signals to the Council homeworlds. We have perhaps 3 weeks before a second wave arrives." "And your recommendation?" President Miller asked. "Take the fight to them," Mark replied, his voice eerily calm. "Attack their supply lines, their outposts, their staging areas. Strike while they're disorganized." The strategy was logical, effective, and troublingly aggressive. Dr. Tom noticed Mark's neural patterns shifting again, the machine efficiency reasserting control over the brief human resurgence. Later that night, as Phoenix orbited Earth for system repairs, Dave arrived at the command center. The grizzled veteran had pulled every string possible to get clearance after hearing about his friend's condition. "I need to speak with him," Dave insisted. "The real him." Dr. Tom established a private communication link to Phoenix's core consciousness. "Mark, there's someone here to see you." "Hey buddy," Dave said, his voice steady despite the strangeness of talking to a warship that contained his friend's mind. "Heard you've been raising hell out there." Inside Phoenix's vast systems, something stirred, warm human memories contrasting with cold machine logic. For the first time since the battle, Mark's voice carried emotion. "Dave? Is that really you?" "In the flesh," Dave replied. "Unlike some people, who've gone and turned themselves into the biggest, meanest ship in the galaxy." Mark's laughter echoed through the communication system, a sound so human that the technicians looked up in surprise. "They say you're forgetting who you are out there," Dave continued, more serious now. "Don't you do that, Mark. Earth needs Phoenix, but Phoenix needs Mark Reed to stay human." The Council's emergency session stretched across 17 hours, representatives from all member species arguing frantically about the human threat. Admiral Gray's report had sent shockwaves through galactic leadership. "We must use the mind-breaker weapon," insisted the military director, pounding his six-fingered hand on the table. "This human-machine abomination cannot be allowed to exist." Meanwhile, Phoenix executed a series of devastating strikes against Council outposts throughout the solar system. Each attack was precise, each victory more decisive than the last. The pattern was always the same: military targets destroyed, civilian facilities left untouched. Dr. Tom monitored Mark's neural patterns with growing concern. After each battle, the machine elements of his consciousness grew stronger, the human aspects receding further. "We're losing him," he told Commander Jack privately. "The victories are coming at a cost. Mark's humanity is being consumed by the ship's battle protocols." On the 5th day of the campaign, Dave requested permission to join a small maintenance crew heading to Phoenix. The warship had sustained minor damage that required external repairs. "I need to see him," Dave insisted. "The real him." Inside Phoenix, Mark's consciousness watched the maintenance shuttle approach. Something stirred within his digital mind: recognition, memory, friendship. These emotional responses were becoming rarer, brief flashes in an increasingly mechanical existence. As the crew worked on Phoenix's hull, Dave made his way to the central core where Mark's original brain tissue was housed in a specialized chamber. He placed his hand against the transparent barrier. "Remember when we were kids?" Dave asked, knowing Mark could hear him through the ship's internal sensors. "How we used to talk about seeing the stars someday. You always said you'd be the first to reach Alpha Centauri." Deep within Phoenix's systems, memories cascaded through Mark's consciousness: childhood dreams, academy training, battlefield camaraderie. For a moment, the machine protocols receded. "I remember," Mark's voice came through the chamber speakers, sounding more human than it had in weeks. "It's getting harder, Dave. Every battle makes it easier to think like a weapon and harder to think like a man." Dave pressed his forehead against the chamber. "Then stop. You've pushed them back. Earth is negotiating from a position of strength now. You don't need to lose yourself completely." Before Mark could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Long-range sensors had detected a new threat: the Council's secret weapon approaching from the outer darkness of the solar system. "Mindbreaker detected," Mark announced, his voice suddenly mechanical again. "All personnel evacuate immediately. Preparing for combat."